Good morning. This week we start Parshat Shoftim. Now the truth is, in every Parsha of the Torah, you need look no further than the first verse to find a life-changing idea. And this is extremely apparent in our Parshat Shoftim, which starts off with the famous verse, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lacha b'chol she'arecha. Judges and officers you must give for yourself in all of your gates. Now we normally translate this as appoint judges and officers for yourself. I'll come back to that. But you must appoint judges and police. The judge's role is legislation. They're the ones who decide the laws and legislate what it should be. The shotrim, the officers, the police, they're the ones who carry out the laws. They're the executive who makes sure that everything happens properly. And the first idea here is that there should be a rule of law. And as we know, Jewish law has very high standards of law. There are a great many laws and they are quite demanding. And the Maggid of Dubna has a wonderful story to illustrate this. He says two people met up and they were discussing the medical practice. One says to another, he says, you know, in my country there are almost no doctors. You only find a couple of doctors in the big cities. But other than that, you don't find doctors anywhere. Yet I see here now, I'm visiting your country, there are doctors all over the place. Even the smallest city has doctors, the big cities have many, many doctors. What exactly is the difference in our attitude to healthcare that provides you so many doctors? So the second man who lives in the country of doctors, he says, you know, you guys, you only ever go to see a doctor when you're desperately ill. You call the doctor when it's an absolute emergency, you're rushed off to the hospital, and the doctor will deal with the emergency. If the doctor's role is only to deal with emergencies, then you're right, you don't need so many doctors. In our country, where we come from, the doctor's role is primarily in preventative medicine. It's primarily in maintaining your health and making sure that you are healthy and that you don't become ill. And therefore, he says, we have doctors giving health symposiums all the time, coming and warning us not to smoke, to eat healthily, to exercise. All of the things that we know are conducive to good health. And he says, and if we have anything that we're worried about, we go to the doctor for a checkup, he helps us through. We have a far higher standard of health than you do. And therefore, we need many more doctors. The Maggid of Dubna says it's the same thing with the Torah's justice system. The ideal in the Torah is that there are many judges, not only in terms of the legal cases, but there are many people dedicated to creating a just society. Because we're not satisfied with only bringing the emergency cases to court. There are many societies in the world which are not particularly concerned that every aspect of our lives should be just and on the correct path. But it just shouldn't be getting out of hand. As long as there isn't murder in the streets and blatant crime and corruption, it's okay. It's not the Torah's view. We don't say, well, as long as there are no real emergencies, the doctors can sit back. No. The Torah insists that there be judges all of the time, that there be people, a system of law, proactively trying to maintain law. And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein takes us one step further. He says, if you notice, I mentioned at the beginning, the literal translation of this verse is judges and police, you must give to yourself. Give yourself. It doesn't say tasim lachem, a place for yourselves, timenu lachem, a point for yourselves. It says titein lachem, give for yourself, almost as if it's a gift. The Hebrew for gift is matana. That's the same word over here. Give a gift to yourself of these judges. Why are these judges such a gift? Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says the judges are supposed to be people of the highest caliber, the most ethically, morally, and spiritually upright and great of the nation. They're the ones who should be the judges. And therefore, when you have such great people in these public roles, they're a gift to you. They're an inspiration. They are role models. One of the great problems in society today is that we don't have role models. We pick everybody apart. We're not satisfied with everybody we have. And too often, the people in power don't really deserve to be role models. The Torah's view is that we should have these people who are emblematic of justice, should be emblematic of the morally good life. They should be a gift to us as well. There's another explanation that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein quotes. I recall seeing it in the Kotzker Rebbe, that he says that a person should place these judges and officers for himself. In other words, apart from the literal meaning of setting up a just society, there is an idea that we should be judges and officers for ourselves, a personal self-restraint. Chief Rabbi Sachs of the UK speaks about two different ways in order to maintain society. One is through external pressure, and the other is through internal morals. He says you can put all of the shoplifting detectors and all of the security cameras and everything else to try to keep people honest. But if that honesty isn't coming from inside, you're ultimately fighting a losing battle. People have to be good and moral and have an inner self-discipline. When Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, he wrote a letter to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein asking him the Torah view on the death penalty. It's a fascinating answer that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein gave. We don't have time for it now. But one of the points that he makes is he says you should know that throughout history, the Jewish people have had a very low murder rate. Not because they were scared of getting caught and not because they were scared of going to jail. Because they were educated from the earliest age in what is right and wrong. They were educated from the earliest age about the sanctity and sacred nature of human life. And because of that, he says, the Jewish people have never been murderers. If we appoint judges and officers, if we give ourselves judges and officers, if we have within ourselves a moral sense of right and wrong, is this the right thing to do? Is this what Hashem would like me to do? Would I be proud to stand in front of Hashem and justify this action? If we ask ourselves those questions before everything that we do, we will live a very different kind of life. We'll have a very different attitude towards so many things in our life. And that's the idea that Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz says when speaking about the way in which we have to behave. He says such an interesting idea. The Gemara in Sotah, in page 3a, Gemara Amud Aleph, it says, Ein Adam Choteh, ele im kein nichnasa bo ruach shtut. A person does not sin unless a spirit of foolishness, of stupidity enters into him. In other words, any sin is really a taste of insanity. I was at a dinner the other night and there were some hot chips. Somebody asked somebody how are the chips. They said, Rabbi, they are good enough to sin for. And I said to them, no, if I'm going to go down, it's not going to be for a plate of chips. No chips are good enough to sin for. But let's think about that for a second, that somebody is willing to give up the world to come, willing to give up a closeness and a relationship with God for a plate of chips. It's insanity. It's insanity. Therefore, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz says, the person actually has a plea. When they're going to stand in front of the heavenly court, and they're going to have to justify their behavior, Hashem will say to them, why did you eat these chips? They'll say, Hashem, I wasn't sane, I wasn't in my right mind, I wasn't thinking clearly. So maybe they'll get off. He says no, because the response Hashem says is, what were you doing at the buffet table? The judges and officers that we have to have for ourselves, we have to be asking ourselves those questions, but we can't wait until the last minute. We can't wait until we get there and the sin is right in front of us and we're overcome by emotion. Willpower alone is not going to do it. It's not just the shotrim that you need. It's not just the police. It's not just the people saying no. It's the shoftim, it's the people making the laws. It's the seichel, it's the mind. Self-discipline is crucially important in a Jewish Torah lifestyle. But self-discipline is not enough. You also need to think, you need to be wise, you need to create strategies for yourself. That's where the shoftim come in. That's where you're thinking ahead, where you're aware of where your actions could lead and what they could come to. I'd just like to end with a final thought, that this is not the same as being neurotic and being insecure. Unfortunately, we know that you have people who are so terrified of sin that they'll go to their nth degree far away that they can't even be in a situation that'll bring them close to anything that will sin. That's not what we're speaking about either. We're speaking about being reasonable, being honest with yourself, and taking realistic and necessary precautions. I'll give you one interesting idea from the halakha, and that is that a man is not allowed to enjoy and smell the perfume of a woman who is not his wife. Now, that seems maybe like a fairly simple, straightforward law. Another law, a man and a woman who are not married to one another or blood relatives are not allowed to be left alone together. Think about if we observed those rules, how much trouble would be averted. Because you have people who are in the room together and they try to apply their self-control, but there's some feelings and emotions and situations where self-control doesn't do it. You need shoftim and shotrim in all of society. But more important than trying to impose order from without is trying to create order and goodness from within. Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha. Give judges and officers to yourself. Have an excellent week and a very good Shabbos.